Hi, my name is Cindy Rang with the Fabric Patch in Ephrata, Washington. You can find us at fabricpatch.net. So today what we've done is we have taken a Zoom class and we've cut the whole thing down for you for another one of those fairly detailed YouTube videos. We have a couple of different styles. Oftentimes we'll just do something fairly quick, kind of show you the basic details about some of our patterns, and then other times we'll do things that are a little bit more in depth. This video was one that was originally 2 3-hour live Zoom classes. I think people paid like $30 for that. We recorded the whole thing. And what Anna has done is she's went in, she's cut much of it down. It's about an hour long, but it has lots and lots of details. So it shows you all about paper piecing, how to do it, the type of paper to use, all of the little tricks. There's even some fun things in there, ruler tricks using a 45-degree using your 45-degree angle on your basic ruler, and also a pinning trick. So what we're going to do is in the description, there is a Hunter Star pattern free for you to download. That's what I take you through all of the steps to be able to do that. We also have a downloadable pattern of this one, the little flying geese one, that's kind of fun. A little bit later, just before we get to the end, I also talk to you about what to do if you have other patterns and how to change those up. All you're going to need to be able to do this class with us is, of course, your sewing machine. Your fabric is just 2 colors. The pattern, print off your pattern and print those. You will need an add a quarter ruler. And we're going to show that for you here. And you'll need a piece of cardstock or a photo. We'll show you that part. Your rotary cutter and an iron. That's all you'll need. I'm going to let you kind of watch, sew along with Brianna and I. Again, lots of detail. I probably repeat myself multiple times, but for a beginner who really wants to figure out paper piecing, I think this will work well for you. And I'll see you again in a few minutes. So what you need for paper piecing, of course, you need the pattern that you've chosen. We picked the Hunter Star for a couple reasons, mainly because you've got kind of a little bit of a diagonal piecing thing going on. And what happens when you're doing a diagonal piecing is that if you lay it the wrong way, when you sew it and it flips up, it ends up being a little bit askew. So we want to show you something that is almost a more intermediate technique, I guess I would say. So that's why we're showing that one. So this is one that Brianna has been piecing, and it is just beautiful. Are you really happy with it? So the Hunter Star is 2 colors. And the thing with the 2-color quilt is that it makes it real easy because you could just do the traditional Hunter Star is white and red. Yeah. Or you can do anything you want. 2 solid colors. Yeah. But what's kind of fun is that if you're picking 2 colors, instead of just picking 4 yards of yellow and 4 yards of blue, why not just pick all of those yellows that will equal about 4 yards and all of those blues that will equal about 4 yards? And I think it is so much more interesting. What happens though is I would say that this is something that is really not beginner, because
that's true.
Because beginner quilters, you worry too much. You would look at something and go, oh, I just don't know if I can put that orange next to that blue. I just don't think that that's right. And so you overthink it just a little bit. But really, if you just go with it, it doesn't really matter, because what will happen is wherever there is something that seems a little bit weird, it just creates that little unexpected movement. So I find a quilt like this to be really exciting. I really, really like it. All right. So, okay. So again, so what you need is your pattern. A couple things about the pattern I wanted to share first. And that is that people talk a lot about specialty paper, and there is a Carol Doak makes a paper piecing paper, and it's an easy tear. But here's the deal. It is just a super cheap typing paper, just a copy paper that is a really low test weight. You can do the same thing. Just buy dollar store plain paper, and it'll work the same way. You can also get the water soluble paper, where if you just add just a little bit of water to it, it kind of melts away. That works really well too, but you're going to pay about 80 cents per sheet of paper. My personal cheap opinion is that neither one of those things are worth it. Just buy cheap paper and tear it off. And if you set your stitch length, and we'll talk about this again in a little bit, but if you set your stitch length at a little bit closer together. I know when I turn my machine on, it is preset at 2.2. I just turn it down to 1.8 so that my stitches are closer together. Then what will happen is it perforates the paper a little bit more. And the other thing that it will do is if as I'm pulling that paper off, it holds those stitches a little bit better. So that works a little bit better. And if for some reason you end up with funny little bits of paper in your seam allowance, it totally becomes dryer lint. Absolutely doesn't matter. Don't fuss about it. Don't get a little stick pin and start picking out those little bits of paper. It's totally doesn't matter. And the typical Schmetz nickel needle will last through about 5 hours of sewing. If it's titanium coated, you can get up to about 20 hours. If you are paper piecing, it's going to dull super, super fast. Just like scissors, you know. And the funny thing about scissors, you know, we've talked about this in other classes. When you cut through paper, people protect their good sewing scissors from paper. It does dull them, but mostly what's dulling them is the fine little bits of like wood pulp that are on your scissors. So if you clean your scissors off, it's not so bad. But your needle, you're going to find that you should start with the new needle. And then when you're done with your project, you'll need to change your needle. As you're sewing through things, if you hear popping, pop, 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 that is the sound of a very dull needle. If you have skipped stitches, or if your stitches are not lined up, you know, right next to each other, if you find that something is kind of, almost looks like they're not laying properly, that's a dull needle. So needles are super cheap, super cheap. $3 for 6 of them. Change your needle. Okay, so paper. One other thing about paper that I want to mention is that when you print off your pattern, I do not understand the physics of printing, but I have to say that you have to print them all on the same printer.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I don't know why, but it totally is totally true. If you think you're going to make 20 blocks, print off at the same time like 24 papers just to make sure you have enough. But if you print off 20, and then, a month later, you're at work and you go ahead and go, I'm going to print off a few more, and you print off 4 more. For some reason, they're different. I don't understand why, but it's absolutely true. So anyway, so print them all from the same printer. Test your size. We do have a little test square, but mostly that's just to make sure that all of your pages are the same size. All right, so that's your paper pattern. The other thing that you're going to need is, I would say you need an add a quarter ruler. You can do it without one, but I don't recommend it. It's an inexpensive ruler, and there just isn't, you really need it. So the add a quarter ruler has been around for a very, very long time. They come 6 inches. Those are kind of silly. I don't think we even sell them anymore.
No, you can, but why?
There's no need. You need the 12-inch one. And then they have a great big Herkin one. It's 18 inches, and that's for the large Judy Niemeyer projects. And we'll show you those in a little bit. So this is the old-fashioned add a quarter ruler. And what it has is it has little lips. So I'll show you how we're going to be using this here in a little bit. But this little edge, it's a lip that's on it. And that is a perfect 1/4 inch. There's a new one that's called an add a quarter plus. It's pink. It looks exactly the same, except it has this little tapered edge, and I'll show you what that's for. And I think I also mentioned that you guys need some sort of like a card. It could be a greeting card or a postcard or a picture. If you didn't grab something like that, you can also use the little cardboard that is in your directions. You just need something that has kind of a nice stiff edge. The other thing that you're going to need is your rotary cutter, and your fabric, and that's it. And an iron. I think it's important to kind of press as you go. One thing that I always like to mention to people, though, is that if you've just printed this off on your basic inkjet printer, your ink will transfer onto the top of your ironing pad. And so if you have a really pretty ironing pad or something that's kind of nice, it's going to have all kinds of lines all over it.
I've also found if you're using white, to do. It's hard only because your iron will attract your ink off of that. So make sure when you're pressing
It's
your
not color fast.
Yes. So make sure if you're pressing your white piece of fabric, put a doodad, a Teflon sheet or something, a white paper towel, put something down so that your iron is not directly on your white fabric. Otherwise you will get dirt marks.
Yeah.
So,
and you want to clean your iron afterwards. It's generally just a good idea. Just if you have that iron clean, if you've ever done anything with fusible web, you probably have those iron clean sheets. If not, we sell them. And just clean your iron, get that ink off of it. And you'll kind of see as we work through this, you'll notice that we have some ink in different places. All right. Let's see. Any questions about their pattern? Yes.
No, just that they needed a special foot. I'm going to get up in here so we doesn't have to zoom in, but this is just a regular 0A foot from FOF. It's just your regular foot, but it has this open space right down here.
So you can see.
So that you can, so you can just see right through. So there's a little opening right there, just so you know, because you're stitching on the line. So whatever makes it easier for you. When I was sewing my Hunter Star pattern, I was using my 1/4 inch foot. Then a laser printer, you can print your patterns off a laser printer also.
Oh, yeah.
Or print copier, but it doesn't matter.
And laser, I wonder if laser ink, do you think that laser ink has less of an opportunity to transfer?
It does because it is heat transferred as it prints, which is why you cannot use a laser printer for
fabric,
or for your fusible because it heats as it goes on. So it should not smudge.
There you go.
There you have it.
Learn something.
You can also do a print off one copy off your printer, and then copy the rest. Just make sure, just like Mom said before, make sure everything on the copy machine is what you're stitching on because it might be a little bit of a difference. But then at the end, you're trimming up all your blocks anyways. So just make sure if you find that one block looks really small, maybe trim that guy first and make sure you trim down all of your blocks down to that 8.5, whatever that might be, because you will trim most of your paper piecing blocks before you sew your whole quilt together.
Yeah.
So
it is totally backwards. I think that's the most important thing about paper piecing to know is that everybody says, well, it seems so backwards. It is backwards. And so as long as you stop trying to fight that and you understand it is backwards, then you'll be fine. And Brianna's right. The other thing that I'll oftentimes do, and we used to do this with Brianna's back when she was a beginner paper piecer, is we would write right on her pattern. We would write yellow, pink, red, orange, whatever color went wherever, so that when she was looking at that, she wouldn't have to try to remember what part of her block is light and what part of her block is dark or whatever. And sometimes if you're putting together something like, a little house or something, you want to make sure this is a window and this part is the door. And so you can write on it however you'd like to, because of course nobody sees that paper. You're just going to rip the paper off. So you can write anything you want on there. All right. Okay. So, one last thing is that we always recommend some sort of a project pouch or some sort of a project container, because if you've gone through collecting all of those fabrics and you have all of your papers and your tool or whatever, it's generally a good idea just to keep them all together in case you don't get your project done right away. And then that way you can pull the whole thing out and keep the whole thing together. Okay, so first thing is trim your paper down to kind of a workable size. And what's going to happen is all of your paper piecing patterns should be numbered. So they should always have 1 through whatever on them, no matter where you're getting them, from a pattern, from a book, from a whatever. If you're drawing your own pattern, and it won't be very long before I feel like you would be able to do that, what you're doing is it's the order that you're sewing on your pieces. So in a log cabin, your center square would be 1, and then your first light would be number 2, your second light would be, or second one would be on number 3, 4, 5, and anyway, keep going around and around and around. This is the same thing. So you can see that for this particular pattern, there's only 4 pieces that we're sewing on. One, the next one we're going to sew on is that one, the next one is that one, and the last one is that one. And then we're just going to repeat and do it again.
Their question is, they have 1 through 4.
Yes.
So 1 and 4 are the same color, are color number 1, and color 2 and 3 are color number 2.
Yes.
Does that make sense for you guys? That was
Yes.
their question.
Oh, yes. And what you can do is what I would do, and this was kind of what Brianna and I talked about just a minute ago. And you don't have to be too fussy about cutting these apart. But if you wanted to, Brianna, is there like a pencil right there? Okay, so if you wanted to, so again, as you're looking at these, maybe this is going to be my blue. This one is going to be blue and blue, and that'll be yellow. And then this one is going to be blue and blue, and that'll be yellow. And so all of the blocks will look like that. And so if you feel like you want to pre-color them, and instead of scribbling and coloring, can you see that now? You might even just want to write yellow, 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 or maybe you have a different color scheme you're doing and write blue so that you know what you're doing. So for this particular, for Hunter Star, half of your triangles are going to look like that. Half of them are going to look like that. And then you're going to sew them together. So it will be just like that. Yellow, yellow. And here's my blues. Blue, blue. And here's my yellows. Let me see that. And the reason, again, that we picked the Hunter Star was just because of the angle. We thought that if you could do this, then you'd be able to do anything in these books and you would be successful. Color is so subjective, for whatever you'd like to do, it won't matter. So we're just saying yellow and blue because we're working with this one. I'm doing black and white in the class today. Okay. All right. So we've got some patterns here. And what I had suggested you guys start with in terms of pre-cuts is I suggested 5.5-inch squares and 2.5-inch strips. And the reason that I suggested that is just so that you have some workable fabric to start with. Yeah, I'm going to explain this and then I'm going to show you kind of the Judy Niemeyer version of it, because I think it's nice if you have just a piece that is kind of going to fit the block that you're making. Back years and years ago, 30 years ago, when we were paper piecing, we would grab our chunk of fabric and just kind of cut off a chunk, hope that it fit, do a whole lot of trimming, right? Yep. Do a whole lot of trimming. And sometimes we cut off a big enough piece and sometimes we didn't. So we find that there's a little less stress involved and a little less waste if you start with usable pieces. And in fact, maybe that's a good time. I think I am going to show this because Judy Niemeyer, she came on the scene, probably 30 years ago, and she really revolutionized paper piecing. So she is really known for all of her paper piecing patterns. We have a bunch on our website, and we'll show you some at the end. But what she does is her patterns are a little expensive. I mean, they might be like $40, but it's because you also get all of the papers involved in it. But what she has you do is she gives you template papers where you're cutting your pieces out first. And so it'll look sort of like this, where she'll say, these are the templates and cut these out of these colors. Can you see those?
I think so.
Yeah.
Maybe they could see those. Yeah. So here's the templates for this block. So you cut all of those pieces out and those correspond with the paper piecing blocks. And so when it comes time to put on, the piece number 14, you have a template that's turning exactly the right way and doing exactly the right thing. And so then when you trim, that doesn't go like that. But anyway, that wasn't right. But anyway, you get that whole thing done. So anyway, so that was really smart when she started doing that, because I thought, well, gosh, that's exactly, let you throw that underneath there. That's exactly what we need to do is pre-cut things. So we're not cutting off a chunk and wasting tons and tons of fabric. So if you take these 5.5-inch squares what I would have you do with these. All right, so take your 5.5-inch block and we're just going to cut them in half on the diagonal. And so if you do that, what you'll have is these are the pieces that you're going to put right there, the piece number 4. Does that make sense? So for our 5-inch squares, we'll go ahead and cut a few. Okay, so again, the reason that we picked this pattern is that when you go to sew on, and again, you'll see in a minute when we say that it's backwards. And so sometimes that idea of trying to match up how you're sewing it, it gets a little bit wonky. And so again, that whole idea of pre-cutting your piece, it makes a big difference. And if you look here, we've got diamonds here, and here we have a wedge. And so I would pre-cut our wedges too. So here is our 2.5-inch strip. And what I would do is I'm going to cut off a 45-degree angle. And I happen to have a ruler that has that 45-degree line. So I'm just going to line that up. Oops, I was on the 60. I thought that looked funny. So there's my 45-degree angle. See that? I'm going to cut that off. And then what will happen is if you're choosing a Judy Niemeyer pattern, that's the whole thing, is she gives you this little template and she says, stick this down there and cut them all this exact size. This is not a Judy Niemeyer pattern. So you just have to kind of, as you line this up, I happen to know that this is 5 inches from here to here is 5 inches. And so what I'm going to do is when I lay this, let me see, can you see it if I do that? Mm-hmm. If I lay this down, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 inches is here, but you have to have seam allowance on both sides. So you need a minimum of 1 inch. So I'm just going to go ahead and bump this thing down so that I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So that's my top right there. I'm going to line that up. And I know that it'll be on the 45-degree angle because I've got my straight line on that angle right there. Does that make sense? So this is right here. I've counted 7 across. I'm going to cut that. And that's my little wedge piece. And now I'm just going to cut it the same way. Line this up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So from right there, I'm going to cut that up and line this up so that I know that this is 45. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And cut that wedge piece.
Paper piecing is a tad wasteful because you have to have such a bigger piece.
You do.
If you are not working out of a stash bucket because you want to get that bucket smaller, you can definitely make it less wasteful. We're not wasting, more than you need to.
But the whole deal with waste, you make up for it with precision.
Okay, so if you guys can see, this is my 45-degree line right here on this ruler. So, and it makes an X, so you can do it from either end. The trick is when you're using your 45-degree line is don't flip it. If you can read the 45, leave it the way it is. So what you're going to do is you're going to put that 45-degree line, you're going to line that up on the bottom of your strip, and then you're going to just move that over enough to cut off your salvage and to create that first 45-degree angle.
Make sure I'm open.
And then
I've done that. I just don't know how to do it on the other end.
Now you're going to take it to the other line. this way. And then you're going to scooch over. You can do it either way. You can measure it where it's on top and you're counting your 7 inches. I know what you were talking about.
So does that make sense? Because you've got a 45 angle going this way and you've got one going this way. So the first one lined up that way. Now all you're going to do is pivot it. And then your 45 will line up. Here's my 45. And it's lining up right there. Your other cheater, and I think this might be why they were lost, is because I cheat. And instead of lining up that 45 on the bottom, I just noticed that, see where my line is right here? My inch lines. I can just line that up right on that cut line.
Oh, that's true.
And this is automatically a 45-degree angle. So I just cheat, but see, are you close up enough to see?
Can you take your camera off your
Can you get closer?
doodad?
Can you see it now?
That's pretty good.
So see, that says 45 right there. So there's my 45, which I can line right up, right on that edge. But look right there. That's just my straight inch line. And that's what makes this a 45. So what you're counting is you're counting over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So I want to count right there, cut right there. All right. And then once I've done that one, I have that 45-degree angle. So I'm going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I'm going to do the same thing. So I can turn this and see, there's my 45, which is lining up right there on the top. Or look right here. That line lines up right on that edge. I'm just going to double check. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Right there. All right. So we've got wedges. And the pre-cutting, the sewing is going to be super simple. Pre-cutting, it's a little tedious, but I think kind of necessary. So at this point, we've got our triangles. We've got some wedges. And now what we're going to do, let's start with a new one. Let's cut some diamonds. Okay, we're ready to cut some diamonds. So the diamonds, you're going to do basically the exact same thing. So we're going to start by finding our 45 on our ruler. So here's my 45. And then we're measuring over 2.5 inches. So on my ruler, I have 1, 2.5. And I'm just going to line that up on that edge right there. And this is how you would always make a diamond. If you're doing other diamond quilts or whatever, it's the same cut. It isn't, you just get that angle, line that up, and there's our little diamonds. So here's that angle. I'm just going to measure over 1, 2.5. And cut that. Do the same thing. There's our angle. Measure over 1, 2.5. Right there, 1, 2.5. And there's that angle. I'm going to cut one more, and then I'm going to start on my black strip. You don't have to have everything cut up, just enough that we can make a couple of blocks. Some of you will just be cutting away while others are figuring out your ruler. It's kind of fun that you get to learn ruler tricks at the same time.
Yeah. And I have to say, I love, love, love paper piecing, but you might find that you feel like you wasted $30 because you hate it. It's a possibility. But
I hope not.
I hope you don't. I really like it. I find it's very methodical.
Yeah.
It's the same steps. You do the same sequence of steps over and over again. And it's going to come out perfect every time. I notice when I am doing a new paper piecing block, I usually make one unit to test my cutting theory to make sure that what I'm cutting is the correct size. I also find that when I'm struggling the most, it is because my pieces are too small. I have air to the size, being smaller so I don't waste as much, where I find that I struggle more making sure that I line it up just right. So if you find that you are struggling, just bump up those sizes. You're going to waste a little bit more, but you're going to have better results. You're not going to feel so stressed out after quilting, because it shouldn't be stressful.
And I think the thing, she's exactly right. The thing with paper piecing is that if you cut it too small, it's not usable. So you wasted more fabric than you would have if you just would have cut it a little bit bigger. And again, the whole idea of pre-cutting the pieces, it really does make it a little bit easier when you go to sew them. One other trick I'll tell you is that you can do what Judy Niemeyer does. What she does is she gives you your set of foundation pieces, papers that you're going to sew on, and then she gives you the template pieces. You could go ahead and print a couple of extra pages and just cut yourself out a template. Because you might find something that's a super weird shape. And so just make some extra pages and put it on there. And Brianna, grab one of those pieces out there. You will see that that it's the shape plus the 1/4 inch plus about another extra 1/4 of an inch, just to make sure that if you're a little bit off with where you're placing it, you have that little bit of wiggle room. And so you can just take one of your patterns and make your own template pieces. Yeah, let me just have those. Yeah. So see, this unit,
It's the far left or far right.
oh yeah. Okay, so this is a Judy Niemeyer fan, star fan. You can see these are the little star points, and this is the background piece. Can you see that? So this one says right here that it's C1. This is the template piece for C1. See the size of that? And she shows you that this is the part that you're going to see. And then she shows you that's your seam allowance that you're going to need. And that's that extra part that you're cutting. It's a game changer. It's really nice. So you're wasting a 1/4 of an inch all the way around, but it's totally worth it, because then you can just piece super, super fast. So anyway, that's how Judy Niemeyer does it. And she was a game changer in paper piecing. So, worked out really well. So that's kind of what we're doing with this. And that, again, seems torturous, but that's why we picked the Hunter Star, because of the weird pieces that you have to cut. So,
and making your own template, that's good. So if you felt like the 45-degree angle line that we were showing you just totally threw you for a loop, don't worry about it. You know, if you continue to make more Hunter Star blocks and need to make more fabric pieces, make yourself a template. And then it is mindless. You're just cutting on 3 sides. And
okay, so now we can set this ruler aside. We're not going to use this again until we square up blocks. We'll need our little add a 1/4 ruler and either your photo get well card, whatever. You have a little straight edge for you, unless you have this one. We'll show you how this one works. And then your rotary cutter, you're going to need that, and your fabric. And then the other thing too is it's kind of nice to set them out in order. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do this one first. So I know that maybe I should turn it around this way. Is that easier to see if I do it that way? So I know my piece number 1 is going to be my black, or my darker one. My piece number 2 is going to be yellow, or in this case, white. Here's my piece number 3. I'm sorry, piece number 2, piece number 3. And then piece number 4 is going to be my blue again. And what'll happen is the first one that we piece, we'll piece this way, and then we'll show you that as you get to going, you just kind of stack them all and you just kind of keep going. So, all right, so we're going to start with piece number 1. So here's the thing. We're just going to, did we put in a new bobbin?
Oh, I don't know. Do you and Eliza who said the sewing machine? So
I'm going to sew a little bit, and then all of a sudden, all my best sewing is going to be not so good. I'll have to. I'll get you started.
And we find, well, it might be two things. We might find that we have to show it from a few angles. So,
I can turn.
We can turn.
Brittany, what if I do this?
She can sew sideways.
I can sew sideways.
That'd be good.
Okay.
But I do need a new bobbin pretty soon. Okay, can you see? Are you all good right there? Okay, so the thing to remember is, and I tell everybody this in every paper piecing class, is by the 4th time I say it, you're going to go, oh, I get it. Oh, I get it. So the first couple of times, everyone's going to go, what?
Yeah. For this first step, I would say if you've never paper pieced before, just watch.
Yeah, because it's super weird. And here's the other thing too. We mentioned this before. It is backwards. So the first thing you're going to say is, it seems backwards. It is backwards, because what you're doing is you're sewing on this line. So this is what we're sewing on. And our fabric is on the opposite side. So the fabric looks like this. So we're sewing on the wrong side of the fabric so that we can see where we're putting our seam allowance. So it is really strange. So we'll just kind of keep doing it, and we're going to do this over. We're making the exact same block. We're making the exact same block over and over and over again. So I'm just going to keep saying it, and then we'll kind of keep going. I'm going to piece a couple of them, and then we'll stop and kind of see. But again, it takes the 4th step before somebody goes, I see what's happening. Mm-hmm. Okay, so we're going to start with piece number 1. This is the first one on. So we put it on the back side. I'm just going to lay it here. And oftentimes I will use, is there glue stick in there?
Yeah, I was going to say.
Sorry. You can use glue stick, or you can use, I'll take a pen. Or you can take a pen. There's nothing yet holding down my piece number 1. Oh, thanks. So I am just going to pin it in place. Your other option is a glue stick. That's usually what I use. And I do kind of like this Quilter Select.
Mom, look up at your screen, see what they see. Can you see that?
Oh, I see.
They see just right. Just so you know, because you were holding it up and then
these? Wait. Oh, it's these. Ha ha.
I just keep trying to chase him.
I know. Sorry. Yes. The Quilter Select, the reason I like it, and it comes there's either pink glue or fluorescent glue, because then when you do glue, I don't know if you can see that or not, but then, you can't. I can see it on my end, so I know that glue is actually there.
And it is your first piece is right side up.
Yes, we're putting wrong sides together. So the wrong side of our fabric goes to the wrong side of our paper. All right. That's it for that one.
Your printed lines are underneath you. So Mom, will you flash them and let them know that?
Yeah.
Okay. She's going to flash you
first. I'm going to go ahead and put that in there so we see that.
Printed goodness.
Printed goodness. So wrong side of the fabric, wrong side of the paper. All right. So now we're going to flip it over. And now what's going to happen, and see this, I wanted to put this in there to show you. This is why I don't like pins as much.
Oh, I have a flower head.
Do you have a flower head one? Yes. Because you have that little rocking.
I remember.
Oh, she has a flower head. These flat flower head pins, that's what they're for, is that when you put those in, then what happens is when you flip this over, it's nice and flat. So that's what the difference is. Okay, so piece number 1 is essentially in place. That's the only one that you're either going to pin or glue down. Everything else you're going to sew. So this is where the ruler comes in. So what you're going to do is I'm going to turn this around so that I can see it. I'm going to take my little card and I'm going to put it on here and fold this over my card. Oh, and in doing that, see how I just have a little bit there? I need to bump that up.
Because you are attempting to center your piece 1 inside the printed piece 1 area.
Sorry.
Oh, and to know how you're lined up, Kathy, she's going to show you because you're going to end up trimming your piece so you know where you're going to line up your next piece. So as soon as you get your first piece centered on your
piece is centered, and now
this is how you know you're lined up.
This is how I know, because I'm going to fold this over and see how I have certainly more than 1/4 of an inch. I'm going to look over here and I have more than 1/4 of an inch. So now what I'm going to do, and you can kind of readjust that a little bit. You can hold it up. If you hold it up to the light, oh, sorry.
The light is not better.
Hold it up to the light. And I don't know if you'd be able to see through it or not, but to take your own. And if you hold it up to a light, you'd be able to see through it to see where you're at. Okay. Keep messing with that. Okay. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay my card right on that line. And again, I'm just going to talk through this. You're going to be lost. So I'm going to say it again and again and again. And then all of a sudden you'll go, oh, okay. So I have piece number 1 in place. I'm going to add piece number 2. I'm going to put my card right on the line, which is my sewing line. Fold that over, add 1/4. I have a little lip right there, and it's going to lock right into place. I'm going to cut that off. So when I cut that off, what I have is I'm 1/4 of an inch past my little seam line. So now all I have to do is see what I'm doing is I'm sewing that on. So I'm going to take this and lay that right on top. Can they see that?
Yeah.
I'm going to lay that right on top there. I'm going to go to my sewing machine. Ready? When I get to my sewing machine, I'm going to open this up and come underneath my sewing machine, and I'm going to sew right on this line. Now, when you sew on this line, instead of starting right up here at the top and ending down here at the bottom, start about 2 stitches ahead. Oh, thanks, that's easier. Start about 1 or 2 stitches ahead of that line and end up 1 or 2 stitches past. So I'm going to come up here and sewing right on that line. Brianna?
Oh, yeah, no, you're fine. I'm gonna raise this up so you get a better view. Sorry, guys. Hold on just a second. That's a better view.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Okay, so I sewed right on that line. Then I'm going to come over and I'm going to press this open. So this was the part where we said that this ink will transfer onto your pretty ironing pad. And so just be aware of that. Oh, and I just ran right over your not iron friendly pen.
Oh, my bad.
Sorry. Sorry.
Oopsies.
Oopsie. Oh, it smells good. All right. And now that's it. Now I'm going to repeat. So I'm going to flip this over. So I've got piece number 1 and piece number 2. I'm going to flip this open and find piece number 3. To sew piece number 3 on, this is the seam that's going to add piece number 3. So I'm going to turn it, find my little get well card, put it on that line. fold that over, get my add a quarter ruler, put my add a quarter ruler on there. Ooh, I didn't give myself very much room. Trim that off. That way I know I have a perfect 1/4 inch. I'm going to take my next piece, and you can kind of see through. I don't know, you won't be able to see it, but I can see that here's my little diamond is shaped just like that, just like this. And so I'm going to lay this right there. So I can see, I'm going to draw on it, what I can see through. I can see that, that, and that is the wrong side. And so see how it matches my diamond? So I'm laying my diamond there. Now I'm going to pick up the whole thing very carefully, come to the sewing machine, and then open it up. And here, oh, there it is. And then I'm going to sew 2 inches in front of it. 2 stitches. And I'm sewing right on that line and sewing 2 stitches past. I've sewn that line. I'm going to press this open, go over to my iron. Did you clean my iron?
No.
No. Yeah. I'm going to press it down. So I've got piece number 1, piece number 2, and piece number 3 on. Now I'm going to flip it over. It's time for piece number 4. The seam that I'm going to sew on piece number 4 is right there, because here's 1, 2, and 3. I'm adding piece number 4. So this is my seam. So I'm going to take my little card, lay it right on that line that I'm going to sew. Fold this over, and now that I've stitched into there, it's no big deal. What you might have to do is just kind of force it ever so slightly. We're all good. Take my little add a quarter ruler with the little lip, and it's going to lock right into that. That's why we like that little card right there. Trim my 1/4 inch. And then I'm going to add my piece. So the next one was my black piece. And again, I can see through, you won't be able to see it. So I'm going to draw what I see. I can see, there's my piece. See, I can see through. So I know that the piece is shaped like that. So I'm going to lift that up, line that up. So I've got my seam allowance, everything right there. And then I'm going to very carefully carry this to the sewing machine. As soon as I get it there, I'm going to open it up. And I'm going to start about 2 stitches in front. And I'm going to sew right on that line. And the reason we're starting 2 inches in front is because then I'm sewing right over the top of that to lock that stitch. Sewing right on that line. This one was where I had started 2 stitches in front. I think I keep saying 2 inches. You know I mean 2 stitches, right? Right? Did they catch that?
I think so.
Okay. Right on that line. All right. And then I'm going to open it up. I'm going to go ahead and press it, transferring my ink, unfortunately, to my mat. And that's my block.
And you can definitely use best press and stuff, as long as you're not using a water soluble paper. Just
one thing to keep in mind is that if you are a fan of steam will shrink paper.
Yeah.
Super bad. So just FYI, if you're steaming along and you're finding crinkly, weird things happening, you could be shrinking your paper. All right. So then once you feel like you have that the way that you like it, then what you do, oh, that's nice. You just made that way darker so they can see it. Can you guys see the block. And we'll do this at the end also, and we're going to start over again. But this was my block right here. This is my seam allowance. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to trim. I don't need anything past my seam allowance. You can go ahead and get your big ruler out if you prefer, which I tend to say I prefer that just because it is non-slip. This is a little bit slippery, but I'm just going to very carefully trim right on that paper.
And if you have a young person, I was at retreats before we had our own retreat center. I was the paper piecing paper ripper or Thangles ripper. So I would just go sit on the couch with, Susan Bundle, and I would just rip. I love that part.
Yeah, she did.
I don't mind it at all.
The boys liked it too.
Yeah.
Well, Ryan likes to help me.
Yeah.
And it doesn't, if your stitch length a little bit smaller, again, 2 clicks smaller than what it usually is, it's when you're peeling all that paper off, that stress on your stitch is not going to be hurt because your stitches are a little bit smaller now.
I want to point out the amount of waste. It is not huge. It's not huge at all. So it's not a big deal that you're cutting them a little bit bigger. This is garbage, but if you're finding that you don't quite have enough, then even go a little bit bigger. So, because some of these, I was kind of like, right there. So there's just a little bit left over, a little bit of paper. And so what's happened is this is my first half of my block. So I'm going to do that again. And then we'll see if we got questions. So this one is the opposite. So I did notice when I first started that when I put this piece down, I don't know if you guys caught that, when I was first starting, oh no, it was with my wedge, that if I started down there, see how it wasn't quite big enough? So when I first kind of cut out my pattern, you don't have to cut right on the line. You could if you want to. I just kind of rough cut it a little bit, just so I, can go ahead and get started. But for this one, so here's my piece number 1. So for my piece number 1, kind of nice if you can kind of hold it up and just sort of see through. And then either using your glue stick. I think my lid was left. I think Eliza left my lid off my glue stick. It's not so great.
Oh, sure. Blame it on Eliza.
It's Eliza.
It's great. I couldn't find my glue stick.
Kids.
I borrowed a naughty glue stick
now
from the kids.
Oh, it's her.
I know. Well, it was still Elmer's, but
all right,
I don't like it.
Here's my glue stick. All right. So piece number 1 is in place. My next piece on is going to be piece number 2. The seam that I'm sewing piece number 1 to piece number 2 is right there. So I'm going to put my little card, or for this one, if you happen to have the pink tapered one, that's what that's for, is you put that right on the line and crease that over. I don't know that I like that so much. And then that way, I think I just don't like change. I'm too old to like change. I'm going to put my little paper in there. But that's what that's for. That's what that taper is for. And then, but I'll use this. Then I'm going to add my quarter and cut that. The reason you need to add that 1/4 inch is that's how you know exactly where you're going to start sewing. And that way you don't have any waste. So now I'm going to take my little black triangle. And again, see the shape of my triangle. You'll be able to see it through your pattern. And I'm doing right sides together. And I'm lining that right up so that it looks just like the piece because it's backwards. I'm going to go to my sewing machine and open this up. And then starting 2 stitches in front of the line, I'm going to sew right on the line and end up 2 stitches past the line. Cut my thread, open it up, and press it. And go on to the next piece. Flip it over. I have piece number 1 and piece number 2. Now I'm going to add piece number 3. The line that I'm using to sew piece number 3 is right there. So I'm going to put my card on the line, fold it over, add my 1/4 inch, cut that off. I have my 1/4 inch seam allowance, which means I know exactly where to sew. I'm going to grab my dark, and again, I can see my triangle, the wrong side. I can see that shining through, and it looks just like that. See it? So I know that it's going to sit just like that. So right sides together. I'm going to lay that on there, right on that edge, seam allowance. Come to the sewing machine. And the reason I bring it to the sewing machine this way is it's a whole lot easier than, oh, you just moved, didn't you?
You're lucky she likes you.
It's a whole lot easier than holding it open and then trying to grab all of these and get to the sewing machine. You may or may not end up in the right spot. So it's a whole lot easier just to look and line up those edges. I mean, that's the whole purpose of adding that 1/4 and cutting that 1/4 inch is so that we can see right where that's going to be. And then that way I can watch it the whole way as I get it over here, right? And now I'm going to open it up. Pay no attention, everything looks weird. 2 stitches in front. So right on that line, just 2 stitches past. You don't have to back stitch because you're going to sew over that seam. Open it up and press it. Some people will just finger press. If you don't have an iron right there at your space, you could finger press that if you want to. You could use a bone folder if you want to, just to get that nice and flat. But it is important to open that seam so that you can move on to your next step. All right, I've got piece number 1, number 2, and number 3 in place. Now it's time to add piece number 4. The seam that I have to sew to add piece number 4 to the other unit is right there. So I'm going to take my card. I'm going to put it right on that line that I'm going to sew on. Fold that over. Woo. And every once in a while, this will happen. I barely have a 1/4 inch there. Doesn't matter. No one's ever going to know that. But I barely made it. I should have probably shifted that thing up a little bit. I'm not going to worry about that. I am just going to add my 1/4. Cut that off.
Because as long as your seam is going to catch that seam allowance,
yeah,
it doesn't matter if there's a 1/4 inch or an 1/8 inch or more.
Yeah,
but
you'll be all right.
It's all good.
It's all good. And then again, I can see through. Here's my triangle. I'm going to lay this down on top of there. That's how far off my little 1/4 inch seam. So sorry. Good for you to see that. Take out my card. Hold these together as I make it to the sewing machine. Once I've made it there, now I'm going to open this up at the last minute.
Oh, I keep trying to move closer to you. Sorry.
And I'm going to 2 stitches in front. So right down that line. And 2 stitches past. Press it. And here comes Lizzie with a dragon.
A dragon. Yep. Don't step on that.
It's playtime.
She's going to step on yours.
She's going to step on my pedal. I know.
Hey, Wyatt was trying to sew with me last night when I was finishing my blue and yellow one. And he was pretty sure that, Mom, I can do this. I can touch the pedal. See? It's like, oh, God, you're worse than a cow. Don't, Lizzie, don't touch it.
Lizzie, don't touch it. I'm going to use this little guy. And it's time to trim it up. And was I right that you guys, it's like all of a sudden the 4th time, it's like, okay, now I understand. Because it's weird, yes. Right? You are sewing on the back side of your block. You're piecing your block upside down. And so it's super weird. It is true. And that's why some people, 20 years ago, Rosalie Bond, she taught here for us for a long time, and we were doing a paper piecing block, and I had given her one, and I said, oh, you just sew on the line or whatever. Well, she brought back this tiny little house block, and she had it framed, and she said, I will never
You
ever.
still have it in your sewing
I still
room.
have it. I still have it. And she said, I will never, ever, ever make another paper piecing block. That was the hardest thing I've ever done. I said, really? You thought it was hard? She says, yes, it was really hard. She said, because she was sewing this way, the normal way, she kept lifting it up. So she'd sew a little bit and make sure she was still on the line. Make sure she was still on the line. I said, oh, you sew on the line upside down. So anyway, she was very surprised. Now she loves paper piecing, but I still have that very first house block that she was never going to make again. All right. So then I trimmed it all up, and here's my block. So now what will happen is, because I've trimmed this right on the line and I have that perfect 1/4 inch seam allowance, and I've trimmed this one right on the line with that perfect 1/4 inch seam allowance. If you were piecing this block with these units without paper, you would have to pin and line everything up and make sure nothing was shifting. But the paper is still on here, holding everything exactly where it's supposed to be. So here's the thing. All I really need to do is just lay this over right on top of each other. I could pin it if I want to, but I want to show you what would happen if I just lay this down, because if you're careful with your trimming, I am just going to sew right on this seam, right where it tells me to, after I've sewn this, after I've pieced these blocks. I'm hoping I have enough bobbin left. I've been playing bobbin roulette. It comes out perfect.
Sorry, guys. We'll just that. Oh,
I have to press it.
Cute.
Comes out perfect. And so
No, go ahead.
for ripping off my paper, and sometimes when you're sewing this together, it does get a little bulky. You just want to rip off your paper like you're ripping off a check out of your check register, just kind of, don't be super aggressive about it so that you rip out your stitches, but just take all of this paper off. And generally what I will do is I make sure that the block is okay before I take all my paper off. But if you have to do any ripping and you have to do any with your seam ripper and you rip that out, you have to have a piece of tape. What will happen is that paper will still fall off anyway. So, and sometimes we've had different pieces where we've had to retape things.
Yeah. Or you just have to trash that one altogether.
Mm-hmm.
It's got some bad mojo and you just chuck it and start with a new piece.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is why when you print off, if you think you're making 20 blocks, you would need 20 halves, right? And then just print off some extra. Print off like 4 extra. And if you know that whole thing about staying ahead of Murphy, if you print off 4 extra pieces, you will not need them. If you don't print them, you'll need them. So if you just stay one step ahead of Murphy and his Murphy's Law, then you're okay. And again, if you end up with weird little bits of paper, just leave it. It doesn't matter. I'm just going to rip all this off so I can give it a really good press. I don't always do this. Normally, I'll sew all of my blocks together. And then I rip off all of the paper, but I'm just doing this just to kind of show you the steps.
And see, I'm backwards. I do each half, then I peel the paper, and then I sew my blocks together with no paper.
Just living dangerously.
Yeah. On the edge.
On the edge.
And it's really easy to sew your 2 halves together. There is no nestling.
You don't have to nestle.
It'll just line up.
It lines up
Beautifully. It's perfect.
Mm-hmm.
That's the wonder of paper piecing.
Yeah.
Even sewing your 2 halves together, it's just like butter. Just
Yep.
It's pretty good.
What's nice about paper piecing, the reason that I really like it is because it's easy to be successful. it's going to come out exactly the way that it's supposed to. If you were going to piece this block by cutting 4 diamonds, 2, are those a trapezoid or a rhomboid?
I think it's a trapezoid.
2 other blocks and 2 triangles, it may or may not look like this, and it may or may not be the right size. But since you're sewing right on that seam, it comes out exactly right. When you have your blocks, if you're doing 2 colors, they're going to go together pretty easily, right? Because all you're going to do is just take your block
And alternate. I found that it was easier to alternate my 2 colors here.
Yeah.
No 2 colors, unless you choose.
Do you guys hear her? What she's saying is that, because here I was looking at yellow is going to be touching blue, but she found that it was easier to make sure blue touched yellow.
Or just my
yellow
triangles.
touched blue.
My big triangles.
Yeah, the big triangles here. So then you're just going to lay out your blocks, and then you just sew your blocks together. If you are a brand new beginner, Eliza did my first quilt. You can find that on our YouTube channel, where she just laid out all of her squares and sewed her squares together. And what's nice about paper piecing is if you get your 20 blocks done and you go, I really, really like this and I want it to be a whole lot bigger, print off more paper, cut more fabric, and make it bigger. And just keep going. You can make it as big as you want and do whatever you want for borders. There's no rule for this. You know, go ahead and put a couple of borders to end it, and then you're good to go. So it is really nice. That's what's nice about this particular quilt, is that you'll, get this down, and it just creates such a cool pattern. Okay, I hope that made some sense. I think that sometimes when you're sewing with somebody, it's kind of helpful to see that. You can pause the video as many times as you need. If you feel like you have questions about the video or have something specific that you want to ask and you're not close enough to just pop into the store, you can email us at info@fabricpatch.net. But I want to mention 3 quick little things. One thing is that these are the Judy Niemeyer patterns that we've talked about, and we held a couple things up. We only talked about it briefly. We did talk about it more in depth in the Zoom class, but we cut a lot of that out for you. But the Judy Niemeyer patterns, it's a pretty cool idea. All of this is paper pieced. It does come with pretty detailed directions. It comes with those template pieces, and it comes with all of the papers. You can also get extra papers if you want to make it a larger size. So we've got quite a few of her patterns, and we do enjoy those. They're very recognizable quilts that are a lot of fun, fairly detailed, and quite a few pieces. Your other option is we have quite a few books. There's a lot of them around. I'm just going to show you a couple. There's this really good Christmas one. There's this baby one. They call it a baby one, but baby basically it's just because of the cute little animals. And then there's this magical one that has unicorns and dragons in it. But I'm just going to pick one of these. Let me just pick the Christmas one. What's kind of fun that I want to mention about a book like this or a pattern like this is that when you get this, you'll have your little pattern that you're sewing, and it'll already be colored for you, which is kind of nice because then you can sort of see where those fabrics go. When you have this, it looks like this is probably about an 8-inch by 8-inch block. And this particular book will show you how you can make placemats and table runners and tote bags, all kinds of different things. But once you have this pattern, you can enlarge or shrink this, make this any size you want. It doesn't matter. It's just a piece of paper that you're sewing on. So it's not really going to matter. This particular one, you can see that we're starting with piece number 1 and we're going all the way around. Same thing with this little guy. But every once in a while, you might find a pattern that is multiple pieces like this. In this particular one, to make this, what is he, a polar bear, you're going to do this section, 1, 2, 3 pieces, this section, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pieces, and this section. Then you put them together. So there's a little thing called a pinning trick. So we have another little excerpt out of that Zoom class, and we're going to show you the pinning trick. The pinning trick you can use when you're piecing any kind of block, but it's particularly useful if you want a different technique when you're sewing these blocks together. So we're going to show you that. So when you're sewing this together, Can you see up close? Can you see it? So see, it really does come out just right. And so what will happen because of the angle, as soon as you flip this over, what will happen is when you're sewing your 1/4 inch seam allowance, it's going to come out exactly right. But what you can do is you can do this little pinning trick. Only I could find a couple of pins.
I got some.
You have some pins?
I
have two. I got two. What you can do is you're just going to measure over 1/4 inch. And see how this has come out right on the seam allowance? And then come right over and measure 1/4 inch. And I'm going to pin it. So see what I did? Can you see that?
Yes. All right, guys.
So I've come right through there and I'm going right into there. So you can do that. And then what I usually do, can you hand me some clips? And then because you're not going to want to sew with that pin just like that, take your clip and clip it right up next to that pin. And then you know that you're okay. And then you can go ahead and take that pin out. And then do the same thing over here. Okay, and I did mention there was a third trick about paper piecing, and that is batik fabrics. We really like to use batik fabrics because there's no right or wrong side to batik fabrics or solids. And so then it's kind of nice if you do end up cutting something that's a wrong angle and you put it down wrong, it's not going to matter because you don't have that wrong side. Just a fun little tip. It's something that we still tend to do, but we do hope that you found the video helpful. We hope you don't have too many questions and it all makes sense. And sorry that it's so long, but sometimes that's what you need if you want to sew together. So we hope you've enjoyed this. And again, you can find us at fabricpatch.net. And please check out some of the other videos that we've done. Thanks. Thank you for watching our video. We invite you to leave a comment, hit the like button, or better yet, subscribe to our channel so you never miss an episode. You can also visit our Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, or Pinterest pages, or find all of those things and our online store at fabricpatch.net.